Hello, this is David from DN Cognitive Counseling. Today it feels like the world has gone crazy. Nobody knows which way is up and which way is down. And it seems that the rules don't seem to apply like they used to. People have different definitions, different ideas, and it gets confusing because you don't know how to navigate all of this. I'm not going to tonight talk about the shooting of Rayshard Brooks. It's too complex, it's too messy, and it's actually too painful. The damage and the hurt from what has gone on and what we're watching is very hurtful to many of us. But I'm going to start to talk about something, what happens when we become single issue minded, where we start to become very foolish without really understanding certain things. And I'm actually going to probably do a number of videos on something called the law of unintended consequences. It's when you look at an event and you come up with a solution in your head and you go, wow, I'm brilliant. This makes so much sense because this is the way I see it in this one moment. Tonight, I'm going to take a look at Trevor, who is a very intelligent man who has a big following. People love to hear him. He's funny, he's witty, he's intelligent. And I want to talk about some of the things that he spoke about tonight that made me have a very visceral reaction. The point that we're at right now is that people cannot see straight, as we're going to see. But just to set the scene, Trevor goes through the entire event with Rayshard Brooks, and he gives you the facts, which again, in this video, I do not want to talk about or go through, because right now, for what this point is going to be irrelevant to this video. So he goes through the entire facts, and then he talks about now his point of view, and that is where I want to break it down.
And immediately everyone goes, everyone goes to their battle stations. That's what plagues me about these stories. Everyone just goes to their battle stations. Immediately people go, well, once again, another example of black people resisting the cops and being criminals, and why are you driving drunk, and why are you running away from the police, and then, of course, you have other people, in their battle stations saying, oh, of course, another story of cops who immediately shoot a black man for just sleeping in his car. But, it's messy. No one wants to admit that the thing is messy. It's messy.
With this point, I absolutely 100% agree with Trevor. This entire story, in terms of everything that goes on here, is incredibly messy. And there are a lot of moving parts and factors which make it much more difficult to come up with simple solutions.
If this story didn't happen now, maybe we would be looking at it differently.
Here is my point, and I think that it's very important to understand this. If this story did not happen now, then maybe we'd be looking at things differently. Now, I want you to think about that for a moment. You have a college professor who has a standard test that he sets up at the beginning of the semester. This is the rule. Everybody has to take the final on the same day. One of his students says, I would like to go protest. I want now not to take this final. I will take it a different day. Professor says, no, you don't have a right. I'm keeping the final to everybody else. You have to take the final. The college suspends the professor because of that action. If it was a different time period, things might be different. This is not a way to be able to run a society. Today's rules can't be different than yesterday's rules. And part of the problem is, and the reason why so many people are feeling a sense of anxiety, is because they don't know what the rules are going to be tomorrow. They don't know what is the next person that's going to pull the rug out from under them. This breeds anxiety. And when you breed people to anxiety, the problem is you get the exact opposite effect that you want. It doesn't lead people to be more open-minded and hear you. It makes them retreat and go back to things that make them feel comfortable.
But it's a messy story. It's not the perfect story. And in a weird way, it not being the perfect story means we should look at it in the most perfect way possible. We should try and break it down and understand how something like this comes to be, because we don't always have video like this, we don't always have stories like this, and we don't even always look at it like this. But let's just take a moment to talk about what happened. You have a man who is sleeping in his car, right? A man who's sleeping in his car and he's drunk. Was he drunk driving? Let's say he is, right? So he's broken some law, or law not worth dying for.
Trevor Noah just stated, drunk driving is not a law worth dying for. Trevor Noah states, and I'm going to go through some statistics with you soon, that drunk driving is a victimless crime. It's no big deal. All it is a little drunk driving. I want you to remember this when we go through these numbers and look at what he's talking about here.
I think we all agree on that.
I don't think we could all agree with that. I don't think anybody that looks at the numbers will agree with it. I don't think the families that are destroyed because their family members were killed, maimed, hurt because of drunk drivers would think that way. Not at all. So the first premise of his argument, that drunk driving, no big deal, is not true.
The police approach him, and even then I asked the question, why are armed police dealing with a man who's sleeping in his car? He posed no threat to anybody.
He posed no threat to anybody. I love this idea. Very few people that you ever approach tell you when they're a threat. This idea of we understand when a person's a threat is a big problem. From dealing with situations and being in situations with, dealing with mental health issues and arriving at people's homes, you very quickly could have an escalation and things go really, really, really bad. Many years ago, I had a person that I was talking to through a door, and I developed a connection with the person who was obviously having a mental health issue. And my partner was outside and the officers were outside because we went out with them together. And the person agreed to let me into their home, but nobody else. And me thinking, oh great, I'm going to go in there and this is going to be great and I'll be able to see what's going on and help the person. When I got back to my place of the home base that we were at, I was called in for a conversation about what I did. And their interpretation of the event was, I put myself in danger in a way that was inappropriate. Yes, I went in. Yes, I made a connection. But ultimately, you don't know what could happen. Now, I was lucky. Nothing did happen. But that wasn't the case for everybody. This nature of we all know who's a danger and who's not is not reality. Part of the reason why people become so reactive in situations is because you never know who's going to be a threat and when. Threats manifest, and by the time you know it's a threat, it's too late. That's why people are defensive.
When Wendy's felt afraid, cars are driving around him, he's not stopping people from ordering food. So why are armed police there in the first place? That's the question I feel like, these are all the questions we ask. Why? Why? Why are armed police the first people who have to go and respond to somebody who's sleeping in their car who is drunk? Secondly, why do the police not give, the man says to them, I will walk home. If you're protecting and serving people, what is the true purpose of you not wanting people to drive drunk? It's that you don't want them killing themselves and other people. In this instance, no one had died because of his driving, and he hadn't killed himself because of his driving.
Yes, right now he killed nobody. He didn't kill himself, he didn't kill anybody. No issue at all. So let him walk home. What's the damage in that?
And so as a police officer, maybe it's because I live in a utopian world where the police are truly just trying to protect and serve, not trying to write enough tickets, not trying to get enough people arrested, not trying to fill quotas. No, they're trying to protect and serve. In that instance, you would hope a policeman would say, sir, you do not look fit to drive. You said your sister lives around the corner. You said you live, we'll take you home.
Excellent. Let's take the drunk driver home and let him just sleep it off. What could be wrong with that? I'm not going to go through more of this because the insanity of the rest of this just goes based upon that premise. The idea here is, and I really want to focus in on just that aspect, and that's the only part here that I care about right now. We don't need to worry about this victimless crime. Let's just let this guy sleep it off in his house. Let him be able to relax. Let's not worry about the problem about this. I just want to go over some facts. Police shootings, and by the way, I believe that police shootings are a huge problem. But if every single one of the police shootings were wrong, and let's say every single police shooting, the police were at fault for their violence, and they were wrong, you're talking about over 1,000 people a year being killed illegitimately. Now, if it's one, it's too many from my point, but let's stay away from that for a minute. But let's say a minute, over 1,000 people a year are being shot by police and being killed, and all of them were because of police brutality, and every single one of them was a problem. I want you to understand how insane what Trevor Noah said and how damaging it is. Because what he undermined was exactly what Mothers Against Drunk Driving was fighting for years. And I don't mean a couple of years. I mean for decades. Decades upon decades. Why? Because in the 1970s, it was close to 24,000 people a year were killed by drunk drivers or in drunk driving accidents. 24,000 a year. By 1985, with the rules that they made, we were down to 18,125. Now, the statistics I'm going to be going through right now is not 1,000 a year. It's 18,000 a year. That's 18 times greater. Now, you'll say, well, it's much further down, so I'm going to go through this a little bit more. By the way, 1985, of the 18,125, that was 41% of all crash deaths. Now, why is that important? Because I want to explain to you how the rules work and why it's knocked down drunk driving deaths. But not always does it knock down the number, but it knocks it down by percentage of people on the road. So if you increase the number of people on the road, you're going to get more drunk driving deaths because of the amount of people that are on the road, percentage of them driving. So you have to take a look at it as the percentage and the number. So 18,125 in 1985, 17,705 in 1990 with 40%. Now, the rules have been increasing every year, well, not every year, but over the years. The rules against people drinking and driving, it used to be 0.01 was the level. 0.1 was the level. Now it's 0.08. So they knocked it down in terms of the amount of alcohol you're allowed in your body that before you are considered to be driving as an issue of breaking the law. In Europe, it's 0.05. So in the United States, you have a higher level than you are allowed in Europe. And I think we're going to get there. I mean, I'm hoping we're going to get there, as you're going to see the numbers in a minute. Now, again, 1,000 something a year from police shootings. And again, I am not diminishing the problem. But to say, take the drunk driver home because it's a victimless crime, when 18,125 in 1985, but even when you bring it down to 2018, 10,511 people killed. Now, these are the deaths. This is not the injuries and people that are hurt and their lives ruined. That's only the people that died. And by the way, in 2018, the percentage was 29% of all crash deaths, which means we took the number from 1985 of 41%, and because of the laws that we put into effect that make police officers see this as a crime, and not just, oh, some poor guy sleeping on the street, or sleeping in his car, on the street he would have had this problem. Sleeping in the street's a whole different story, but being in that car, the reason why this is such a big issue is the amount of people have been destroyed and their lives ruined and the people's pain that went through. I've worked many years with people who have had these issues, both the victims and the perpetrators. This is not a victimless crime. This is not about some poor guy that's sitting in his car sleeping. In my state, if you are drunk and you just leave the car on, you will be arrested for that crime, as it needs to be. Because I understand we don't want 1,000 people shot. And again, I'm saying 1,000 as being all of them, because we know it's much smaller in terms of the number of unjustified shootings. But assuming for a minute that all of them were unjustified, the amount of people killed by DWIs, the amount of people hurt, by the way, right now, the latest statistic was 800 people hurt a day from DWI car accidents. So please bring him home. Please go rest. Don't worry about it. Now the next day he kills somebody. Whose fault is that? Will Trevor Noah be at the family of the damage and the destruction of the next DWI victim and say, you know something? Oh, I'm sorry for making that statement. I'm sorry for your pain and loss. But at least one other guy didn't get shot. And the amount of people being killed by this is astronomical. And the amount of people hurt by this is astronomical. And it doesn't have a race or a gender or anybody else being like targeted by it. It's anybody could be a victim of this. But because of emotion and because of bias, you don't see the big picture. You see this one little segment, this one little idea. Don't feel bad for a DWI driver and say it's a victimless crime. There is no victimless crime in a DWI usage. It's no victimless crime, not by any stat. And the sad part is, not enough people are caught fast enough to save 10,000 lives a year. Now, 1,000 lives a year in terms of shootings, and all, absolutely. And again, every single person who is guilty of a crime related to that should pay the price. But do not for a second say, oh, let people just drive drunk. Let's not hold them accountable anymore. That is dangerous. It's dangerous for society at large. And if we went back to 40% numbers, by the way, for the amount of people on the road, remember I said it was 41% and we knocked it down to 29. So if we went up another 10%, you're talking about another 1,500 people to 2,000 people dying a year on average, which would be more still than all the police officers who shot in the entire year. Again, I am not promoting in any way, shape, or form anybody should be shot. Not for anything. And again, I'm not getting involved in the specific case. I'm responding to Mr. Noah's response that this was victimless and what he did was no big deal and the police should have just let him off. They should just send him home, which be against everything that people have been working for to stop DWIs, to stop the damage it does to the families and to people being hurt. And that's what I mean by not understanding a law of unintended consequences. I don't think Trevor Noah, in his mindset, really was thinking about this. But he's going out there to a lot of people and has a large audience. And sadly, people do not recognize this. I hope that you'll like this video and that you hit like. I hope you'll share it with people to at least give them a different perspective and idea. If you disagree with anything I said in this video, please comment in the section below. If you'd like to support this channel, hit the Patreon, Subcribe-star, become a patron on Subcribe-star. And I thank you very much, and I wish you a good night and good mental health.